Welcome to another edition of Globespan 24/7, owned and operated by Mr. Nohar Singh, with our technical advisor tonight, Mr. Devin Bissoon. I'm your host and Vishnu Bisram. We are discussing tonight violence, alcoholism and violence as it relates to the Indo-Caribbean community and in general, Guyanese, Trinidadians, West Indians in the Caribbean, as well as here in North America. With us tonight are three distinguished personalities, one from Canada, I should say two from New York, but one is also based in Guyana. And I myself, as a host and moderator, I travel quite regularly to Guyana, in fact, almost every month. So I'm somewhat familiar with the issue, but I will be engaging the three esteemed gentlemen. So the three gentlemen who are with us tonight, Mr. Sahadeo, a noted author who has written quite a lot on the Mahatma himself, Mahatma Gandhi, and other issues, problems facing the Indo-Caribbean community. We have Mr. Vishnu Mahadeo, who hails from New York, the Greater Richmond Hill area, who travels very regularly to Guyana to address issues there, and also who works on various kinds of social programs here in New York City, attempting to help Guyanese, West Indians, and Caribbean people here in New York. And we have Mr. Albert Baldeo, a noted lawyer, who is a former magistrate in Guyana, who has studied law in the Caribbean, a distinguished personality who ran for elective office in New York. He was a former district leader as well. And Mr. Baldeo is a champion of political causes here in New York City, as in addition to our friend, Mr. Vishnu Mahadeo, who also is a political activist and champion of various kinds of political causes relating to Guyanese and Indo-Caribbean people in Queens and in the greater New York area. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for taking your time out of your very busy schedule to join us this evening for this very important topic of alcoholism and violence. Let's define the problem, and if I may ask Mr. Sahadeo out of Toronto to tell us what is this issue of alcoholism and violence?
Well, I think the experience that we have all probably gone through has brought us to the stage where a priest had to risk his life to complain about noise and threats and so on. That's what we gather from the media. But we all know that we are part of the problem too, because many of us, when we grow up,
just to cut you out, this noise that stem is from the consumption of alcohol. These men, boys, were very disruptive and rowdy in the street in front of the pandit, the priest, and the pandit complained about it. There was no response from the police. And so he decided to confront the drinkers themselves, who in turn unleashed a barrage of attacks, physical attacks on him that led to his demise or death. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's probably something that should be a marking point of how we deal with this issue. Otherwise, his death would have been in vain.
And so this issue of violence and alcoholism seems to be widespread. This particular incident happened in what we refer to as Topside or Skeldon in the Crabbe Creek area. But alcoholism is a problem all over the country, not just in one particular area. And that particular issue of alcoholism and violence reigns all over. Yeah, carry on.
That's correct. That's correct. That's why I think we thank Nuhar and others of this group to organize it. We need to discuss this thing and make sure that it does not rest. If you look at the media, it seems to have finished already. And those of us who have consumed alcohol, as I did, and then stopped, would know how serious this problem is in breaking up marriages, wrecking the lives of individuals. It's not just a health problem, it's poison. But it seems to be socially acceptable. And while a lot of people are looking to government to make more laws and enforce that, I think I would like to concentrate on what individuals can do to stop this. In fact, the article I wrote was in Guyana Times on September 19th, and a friend just indicated to me tonight that it had 46 likes. If you compare the likes with many other articles in the newspaper, you will use that as some guide to see how important it is. And I think we have to tackle it. We can resolve it or reduce it. Because my contention was when I heard many religious, political leaders and priests and saying that this thing cannot be solved, it's ingrained in the culture. That is what got me moving, because I don't think that is where we should leave it. In my article, I made reference to Gujarat, and I may have some friends listening from Gujarat here, which is Gandhi's place of work. They had a very serious problem with this issue. Gandhi raised it, made it public, and that is now a dry state. You cannot consume alcohol there with very few exceptions. But who enforces it is not just the police, it is the individuals, the families. I went to Gujarat in 2019, interviewed quite a few people, because I was really interested in some of the things or changes Gandhi had made. And we all know his quote that if you want to be the change, you have to be the change. If you want to change something, you must be the change you want to see in this world. And that's where I think we should start. I did have a lot of suggestions.
Okay, but, so before we address the suggestions, so we have defined the problem, and you are suggesting that it should remain on the front burner of the media. So let's hear from Vishnu Mahadeo, and then we'll hear from the scholar himself, Mr. Albert Baldeo. Vishnu Mahadeo.
Well, I must say thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Singh. This is a very important social issue. Now, the newspaper or the media should not necessarily be the solution environment. The social services needs to be able to have the capacity to identify these problems and work effectively to create a solution. The media will just sensationalize a problem, and if it has no marketing value, it disappears in the back page. So it becomes irrelevant. So we cannot use the media as a yardstick to be able to evaluate problems. The social services system needs to be in place to identify these ills of society and have alcoholic rehabilitation program instituted. So that's where I will continue my
excellent,
conversation.
Excellent point, Vishnu. Mr. Baldeo?
Yes, sir. I'm happy to be on this program. I'm glad you mentioned that I was a magistrate in Guyana, and here's the reason why. In Guyana, when I presided over cases, there were many criminal cases that were fueled by the drinking of alcohol. And this also happened in the interior amongst Amerindians and Indians and just about every Guyanese. So it's not something that is only unique to Indo-Caribbeans or Indo-Guyanese. It is something that affects us. It has its roots and its genesis, unfortunately, in the imperialist and colonial system where there were no other outlets for people. And they had the bush rum and such, and alcohol was the only means of recreation. That was their only way to triumph over the sadness that surrounded them in the plantations. Now, no one wants to be born a drunkard. No one wants to be a person who indulges in the abuse of alcohol, but it is a disease. It is an unfortunate incident. There are some people, however, who abuse it. You can walk down Liberty Avenue, you'll see people really abusing it. But I grew up in the sugar estates, like in Better Hope. And every Friday afternoon, you would see them trying to have an outlet. That was their only means of recreation. That was their only means, apart from playing cricket on Sunday, that they would then congregate and talk about what went on and try to have an outlet. And that was the only means of recreation. Now, Guyana, as you know, is a developing country. However, we have that problem here in New York, and that is not to define us as people who beat up our wives or who are drunkards. No, there's a small percentage that needs help. Counseling, social programs, help, and that is why we need resources to be put here, city, state, and federal, for which you pay taxes, so that we can have solutions and recreation facilities, after school programs, vocational programs, things like that. So we call upon the government to help us in these things and not just say, oh, Guyanese are bad people or immigrants are bad people. There was a gentleman called Ignatius Bihari when I started campaigning in 1998, and he was killed by a drunk person from Mexico. And this Latino person couldn't even remember what he did. He just struck Mr. Bihari. I think you recall that protest we had. And he died, unfortunately, left a widow and his family. Now, what is the solution to that? Do we incarcerate a man like that for lifetime? Or do we try to get social services and help the people who have been affected in a meaningful way? These are all things that we need to discuss. We need solutions to. We just can't paint it with a broad brush. A lot of the politicians would want, and some of our own people say, oh, we do have a domestic violence and Guyanese do beat their wives or what have you, or that we drink a lot of alcohol. But that should not define us. We are hardworking, proud people who have built this community. But there's a 2 or 3%. And, the bars on Liberty Avenue, you have more bars now than roti shops. And you have more bars than offices, medical and legal, right? So, there's a competition there and there's a high demand. So perhaps there's some sort of thing we can do here, Dr. Bisram, to help. And it has to come from the politicians and the people who lead us, from the mayor right down, to recognize this problem and to bring solutions to our communities by social, solutions and things like that.
Vishnu, I mean, you're from the Richmond Hill area. I mean, there are quite a number of, drunken people in Richmond Hill.
Well, one of the things that we have really that is invading our community is that the people are capitalizing on this, what you call pandemic. Unfortunately, you find that the bars are having a lot more attendance than the mandirs at the masjid. And there's a lot of emphasis within the city to start back business, but that is from the business where we are seeing the negative aspect in our community. However, they need to also talking about the social elements, like going to the masjid or attending schools. These are areas where we as community leaders need to focus our energy and start talking to the various sectors of people we influence to make sure that they actually listen to us and let's work together and make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ram, I mean, you are from the Toronto area. What is it like there among the immigrant community in terms of alcohol abuse?
It's a problem wherever we live. And I agree it's not everybody, but I'd like to start with the individual. I used to consume alcohol when I was a teenager. Your first job, half of it goes to entertain the bigger boys who belong. These are my suggestions now, and I ask my other two panelists to take care of it or take it from there.
Are there social programs to help, as Vishnu was suggesting, to help alcoholics or those who have a problem?
Yes, there's Alcoholics Anonymous and so on. There are laws like Guyana and US and Canada. There are laws, but it's happening. Okay, so what I am suggesting, I'm not saying government is not important or lawyers and judges are not important or priests. I am saying all of that is important, but this is where we can start quickly is with the individual. The individual doesn't have to go through parliament and police and so on. Number one, if you are a priest, and I know this is not novel, you tell the people that you are not doing their work if there's alcohol present. Some priests have done that. If I am invited to a wedding, I let them know very clearly that I am not attending if there is alcohol. There is a funeral, and you can't distinguish now between a funeral and a wedding as far as alcohol is concerned. They're all over the place. Priest or whoever is related to the family announce very quickly that this is a funeral. If you have alcohol in the trunk, make sure you don't open it. The police will be called. I will be calling the police, and I will be testifying.
Right. So you want to
that.
shut down the trunk bars.
That is definitely one of the remedies. As we are lawyers too, there are not just criminal remedies. There's civil remedies. And I think there's a lot of work here for young lawyers. If you own a bar and you're serving minors, or you're serving a man who is already so intoxicated he can't even stand up, you have to bear some responsibility if that man is continue to be served alcohol and he leaves there and injures himself or somebody else.
But
I am
how do we
very sure the
enforce?
common law jurisdiction would give some remedy to those who are injured.
How do we enforce this? I mean, Albert, you are a magistrate and a lawyer. Oh, can this be enforced?
Yes, it can be. You know, many bars have been closed down by virtue of having undercover people go in and serve who are underage, and that's like entrapment, but it's a very useful tool. As a matter of fact, I was at an event and I saw some young girls walked in, and I told the owner that I think you're being set up. That these girls, I don't think they're over 18, and if you should put them out, because I think that somebody's sending them to have you arrested for serving, or because it falls on the owner. Even if the waiter goes there, they're going to go for the owner, and it can lead to civil and criminal consequences. So that has happened a lot. There's a lot of people who've lost their vehicles due to driving whilst intoxicated, whilst being impaired. And it is something that can be done, but I would stop short of enforcing it in weddings and funerals. You see, we come from a culture of where a little bit of alcohol is always, tossed around at these events, whether there's pain or whether there's celebration. It's part of what is the norm. And therefore, to step too hard on them would be like, being too harsh a penalty. However, if we can educate people, if we can let them know that if you're going to have a drink, then have a designated driver. Don't get involved with alcohol. There are serious consequences. And you'll be amazed when people drink alcohol, they become a different personality altogether. I would be amazed that I've seen rational people and how they behave when they're drunk. You are really, really amazed, because alcohol gives them Dutch courage. It gives them a lot of different personalities, and they get into trouble. So it's very difficult for a guy to say you walk into a bar and then somebody's going to see you and said, oh, Mr. Baldeo, come have a drink with us. Well, why not, man? You're being antisocial. So that is where, Dr. Bisram, you would have to not go to a bar, because there's always that chance that you'll be called into something that you don't want to get involved in. So, it depends on a lot of discipline. It depends on society. It also depends on the kind of network of support we have. A little brandy. For example, some folks I know use a little bit of brandy with some milk every day, just a small snap glass. I know of some very prominent lawyers who, without that brandy, they're not as good as they are when they're in court. But when they take that shot of brandy, you'll be amazed how vociferous they can become and how effective. I'm not saying that you must drink to do these things. Listen, this thing is in our calypsos. Rum till I die. And there's another song I was telling them Rum is My Lover. This thing is memorized and concretized in Calypso. Look at the picture Devin has there, where it's part of the the social background of where we come from. Rum Till I Die. Look, there are pictures of advertisements of great players like Rowan Canai taking a little drink after white rum. There's a song that Can I Drink Your White Rum and Nani Drinking Wine. I grew up on those songs in the sugar plantations, and I understand that it's part of our culture. Whether right or wrong, it is part of our culture. That we accept. However, as evolutions and generations have evolved, many of our children have not been subjected to this abuse, alcoholic abuse. Some of them are gentlemen, they're women too, they're very upstanding, and we've grown beyond that. There would be the odd, there would be like the circumstance you talk about, the pandit being harassed and bullied. I'm sure if those boys were not drunk, they would not have done such a thing. They had Dutch courage and they went and did the wrong thing. So it's something we got to look at in a way whereby we can somehow, as a community, as a nation, as an ethnicity, tackle and make sure that we can get on top of this. And somehow with all the leaders, as the other speakers have said, to somehow get a handle on this. Law enforcement being too rigid on it will not be the solution, because then there'll be a lot of discrimination there. And it's not, there are many Latinos who drink a lot also. So what about other ethnicities that abuse alcohol also? If you're going to enforce the law, then you must enforce it equally across the board. You just can't target Guyanese or in the Caribbeans as such. So the law is a bit difficult to enforce, especially since we have so many other issues on our table and COVID and all of this. This is not exactly a priority at the moment. People are drinking because they've had COVID and they've had problems, they've had deaths. There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of problems there. So, I'm glad you brought this topic up at this time, because it is something that leaders and elected officials should come together, mayors and governors, and address, because it is an issue in our communities.
So you're suggesting responsible drinking.
Yes, I believe that if one is going to drink at home, or if you're going to have a designated driver, or if you're going to have a shot or two, there's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, medically, they say some red wine, a glass of red wine every day, is very medicinal. You see, we live in America, so, it's a land of freedom, and it's difficult to enforce such laws. It's not like we're in a country where you have, laws like that if you consume alcohol, you can be, I think there are very, very serious penalties. You'll be amazed that some people, I don't know how far it goes, but there are very, very serious consequences for just having a drink. And I'm not advocating by any means that people should be drinking. All I'm saying is to have responsible drinking. If you have to take a drink or two on an occasion, on a weekend, then I imagine you have to take the necessary responsible measures to make sure that you don't, invade other people's privacy, invade other people's rights, don't lose it, and you try to keep it within control. But however, Vishnu, that's easier said than done, because I've known of people when they take one, it leads on and on and on and on till next day morning come.
That's
so.
Right. They don't stop, until a few bottles are consumed. Vishnu Sahadeo.
Yes, sir. Well, I am not a teetotaler. However, one of the issues that I want to bring, and we have two dynamics here. The environment here in the United States is now totally alien to that of Guyana, in that we don't have the situation of people working hard in the cane fields or anything of that sort. People working, they have social responsibility to their family, but many of them are using the alcoholism or the easy access to the bars as an opportunity to socialize. We need to have an environment where people can socialize without necessarily having to go to a bar. There's no gaming hall in Richmond Hill. There's no social club in Richmond Hill. These are all the elements that are missing. And at the same time, we also need to have more proactive engagement from our religious institution, where it is not established just for religious activity, but they should also open their doors to more social activity, engaging the community. These sort of social programs add value to our community. In the situation there in Guyana, what you're having is that back in the 60s and 70s, yes, you had the king cutters overindulging and going to the rum shop. However, right now, Guyana has a serious labor population crisis. People are very difficult to get hold to work. And what is happening is that people have this new dynamism, which is they rely totally on barrels coming from the United States and handouts. And they are not putting themselves down to earn any real money. So we have several social problems that are evolving in time. But the social service, be it here in the United States, needs to be a little more, our elected officials need to put these social programs in place. And in Guyana, our social service minister, Minister of Health, needs to be able to address these social shortcomings with an effective solution. And I'm imploring them, because I know this is being viewed by the Guyanese community in Guyana, to ask your social service minister and your Minister of Health to start looking into programs that will help to minimize this problem.
Right. So we don't have social clubs in the U.S. I mean, among Guyanese or in the Caribbean or Caribbean people, we don't have social clubs in Guyana, as best as I know, as well. So how do we go about finding a solution to this, gentlemen? I know you have brought up that issue of social club, and Albert Baldeo was also. Mr. Baldeo, you have any ideas?
Yes, I think that we have to use more recreational facilities. Cricket tournaments, like you have these 2020 cricket games that could finish in an hour or two.
They're talking about 10 overs now.
10 overs, correct. You can have 10 overs, and you can have various other recreational things like swimming and golf, other things that can help you. Because, you know, when you think of it, a nice cup of coffee actually gives you a better stimulus than alcohol. And I always tell myself that instead of, why don't you go to you know, the coffee shop and buy a nice cup of coffee? You got a better you know, semblance of a feeling. So I think that there's room for that. Swimming, all these other things. The problem is that in clubs, like all these clubs that you congregate to, like a GCC club and an Everest or what have you, Palm Court and all about, you end up drinking alcohol. And if you don't drink, then, you know, that will bring another issue as to what type of person you are or what kind of a man you are. So, you know, this is also bad because people look at drinking as the machoism. That is a defining basis on which you're measured. And it's a very foolish way to judge people. But people must be strong and say, listen, I don't drink. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I'm a teetotaler, like some folks have said on the program. And, you know, I respect that because there's a lot of discipline. Or as Mr. Ramnarine said, he used to drink and he stopped. These are all great exercises in discipline and in controlling oneself. And one should be proud of that. I myself have been able to do that. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I may have in the past, but, you know, you exercise discipline and think about your body and your health and how you can prolong your life and how you can have a better life, especially with COVID. So I think that we must all be inspired. People like Gandhi and so on, all these great people. Even Chetty Jagan was a great man. He never drank. He never smoked. He always had a healthy lifestyle. These are people who inspired us, you know. So I think that we've got to take counsel from these great people. We also have to have many programs. And look at David has just put up something, and an alcoholic collapses and dies in the yard when he drink too much. And I've heard of some young people in New York who have died from drinking alcohol. And this is a problem we have. So we've got to think it out and have more programs, give more money. You know, New York is a very wealthy place. The politicians have got to give funding. They give funding for all different things. You go and look for pumpkins in the field. And I'm not saying these are bad ideas. This is good. But you must also give money to other organizations that are set out to help people get unemployment when they're fired, to get social services, to get after school programs. You must set them up. And right now we don't have nothing. We don't have nothing in Richmond Hill like other places, you know, Belrose, Wood Howard Beach, Glendale, all these places that pay less tax than us have better facilities. And I think that's a double standard that we've got to change in this community, and also in Guyana has got to put some more money into these things. Recreational facilities.
Yeah, Ram, Sahadeo?
Yeah. Whatever society you describe, you will find in that society people who for generations have not consumed alcohol, and they have participated in all aspects of society. It might not be a long list, but maybe when we have social recognition and so on, we should probably start doing that. Say family A for 4 generations, you would not find alcohol in their home. And when they have a wedding, reasonable to give people notice, because this sounds drastic. This, on the wedding invitation, this is a non-alcoholic event. You have courage, you do that. Unless we can say whatever conditions exist, your courage lies in a bottle. Let's admit that.
Okay, so then let's think in terms of some solutions. How do we go about addressing solutions to the problem other than labeling your invitation no alcohol permitted?
It's your look, it's your house, it's your family. Look, we had a serious problem with smoking. People are still smoking, but not many. And they go outside the building in the cold and they're smoking because to smoke in the building is illegal. There are many lawsuits where the cigarette manufacturers are responsible for the health problems. We all agree that there are health problems associated with alcohol. These are all issues we can take example from and try to solve it. Again, I am emphasizing the role of the individual. I am not saying government and police and social services are not contributing factors, but we got to start from the individual, and you can start tonight and says, look, I am solving this. You don't have to wait until you make another law and then nobody's there to enforce it.
Okay, so Vishnu Mahareo, we start from the individual level, trying to convince people to disabuse alcohol. What do you think of that idea?
Well, actually, if we look at what is happening right now with the pandemic, if you go to any of the social places, like a funeral home, they have a precondition. If you're going to a wake, invitations are very clear now. Proof of vaccination and wear masks. These are things that have been instituted in the system. I recently came off from the US Open. And there at the US Open, it was, you had to be vaccinated in order to be able to get a ticket. And when you're vaccinated and you get a ticket, it was business as usual. We need to have that also with these folks in the alcohol environment, because it's a taboo. It's something that is hurting our society, and it's a sick. And we need to be able to do this and make a difference. So this is where I'm going with it. We need to be able to not just make it socially acceptable to someone to drink, because once we start giving that little edge, people will capitalize on it and will continue to erode that limit. So we need to be able to let people be fully cognizant about the effects of alcoholism, the damage to their family, the damage to their kids, the impact on their society. And if they're advocates within the community, especially from the religious environment or the social clubs that advocate for these, it will help to make changes.
So as a start, in addition to getting to the individual, you're saying that we must tell them about the consequences of alcohol, the damages it causes to the health of the body, and to the family as well. See, alcohol not only impacts on one's personal life, but also one's health and the family, because the family is also affected by alcohol consumption, where other members of the family may face violence or will be concerned and worried about the individual who has become an alcoholic, who may end up in a health clinic or a hospital, or God forbid, drive DUI, DWI, end up in an accident that leads to very tragic consequences. Albert, you being a former magistrate,
this is where the law can provide some assistance, because laws are laws, and once you breach them, like you said, they can be enforced and they can help in a remedy. I agree that there should be, at least going into bars, there must be first and foremost the COVID pass. Got to make sure that nobody, or that they've had the COVID tests before they go into bars. I believe that that is the golden rule, because that is actually worse than alcohol right out of COVID. So once a COVID test has been established, we may have to institute a bigger tax on alcohol, or the sales of alcohol, just like what it did with cigarettes. And also, when things are more expensive, then people will choose between them. And I don't think that making Bisram will take over, because that's very difficult to do in America. But most happening in Guyana, got to be careful with that. There's no parallel market that comes into play. These are not easy solutions, Dr. Bisram. These are things that have to be thought out at in Parliament, in Cabinet, and in the halls of corridors of justice, and also in lawmaking. It presents a lot of issues, but I am in favor of that if you increase the tax, it may serve as a deterrent to people to say, well, this thing don't make sense. I'm not going to buy any alcohol now. It's better I drink a cup of coffee, or I buy some cheaper champagne or wine or whatever, but don't buy the alcohol. And one thing I thought about is that if you see, a lot of these people are small business owners too. This is their only means of livelihood. A lot of the folks on Liberty Avenue, that is what they depend on to feed their family. They are not drinkers, so to speak, but that is their business, and it has been licensed by the state of New York. So how do we draw the line with these people? They don't want to go and join the food stamp line or the dole line, so to speak. They want to continue to be independent. They are legitimate. So how do we squeeze them in such a way that you squeeze them right out of the economy? They do contribute, although they do provide a service that has criticisms and issues. And also, I believe that if we have widespread advertisement medically, like how we see these lungs, one parliamentarian in Guyana, he was vice president. I don't want to mention his name, but he told me when his father died, and he saw his father used to smoke, and he did a postmortem. He went into the postmortem because he know Dr. Mutu. Dr. Mutu used to testify in her cases when I was a prosecutor, so he allowed him to come into the room. And he said his father's lung that shriveled so badly and was so dark and black and like ashes, that he immediately stopped smoking. He didn't touch a cigarette after that. So occasionally I saw him smoke one or two, but I'm saying that this is an education he got with his dead father's corpse, that lung cancer killed him, and his lungs had shriveled up to such an extent that was the ravages of smoking. Yeah. Same thing with alcohol, cirrhosis of the liver. So if you're able to demonstrate these things more, I've seen some ads on TV, more in the local communities, in the Hispanic-speaking, Latino community, Guyanese community, and so on. The Sikhs don't have this problem. It will help to let people know that we should not be doing this. We should be preserving our health. And we're also setting a bad example for our kids, because when I see daddy smoking and daddy drinking, they feel, well, that's a good example. That's not a problem. And that is not to say only the men drink, Vishnu. Okay. So let's drink you under the table.
I want to continue. I want
This
to
is
continue.
over. So we have
I
to
want to
get
continue. I do want to continue on that thought, and so, but we must take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue from there.
Are you missing homemade food, snacks, drinks, roti and curries, or have a busy schedule? Then get your favorite curries and roti delivered directly to your home with all from one supplier. Come order your duck, goat, or chicken, fully cooked and ready to eat with dal puri or bus up shut. We also now have chicken tikka masala or lamb vindaloo available with regular naan or garlic naan. Don't forget to add your solo, icy, coconut water, or Nestle drinks to these delicious meals. Select your choice, and load your box and let allfromOneSupplier.com deliver directly to your home. All from One Supplier has you covered for all your food, plus if you need pepper sauce, curry powders, fish, meat, ghee, and so much more. We also have tasty pastries like pine tarts, cheese rolls, currants rolls, coconut rolls and so much more. Sales are ongoing every week, and your first order is 10% off once you apply the coupon code, Globespan24x7. Log on to allfromonesupplier.com today and purchase. Allfromonesupplier.com is your one-stop shop for all West Indian items, and remember, it's free shipping to all US states.
Travelspan Alaska Cruise is available from May 29th to June 5th, 2022. Enjoy an unbelievable experience with a 7-night multi-glacier cruise. Travel through a beautiful land on a world-class ship and visit the famous Alaskan glaciers up close. This cruise departs from Vancouver and enjoy a tour to several different ports. At the end, you will also have an opportunity for a city tour. Call Travelspan today to book your trip, with affordable payment plans available. In New York, call 212-243-0865. Georgetown, call 227-1701. Berbice, call 337-4287. Trinidad, call 645-1604. Travel plans? Call Travelspan, serving you for 27 plus years.
Dave West Indian Products is the only distributor of 100% authentic West Indian products. Dave West Indian supplies fish, vegetables, curry, spices, sodas, and coconut water, plus ghees and much more straight from Guyana and the Caribbean. For all your shopping needs, visit Dave's Guyana Fish and Grocery Market. Dave West Indian products are also available in West Indian stores, Key Food, and allfromonesupplier.com. Dave West Indian has a full line of the most desirable products to fit all your needs. So visit Dave Guyana Fish and Grocery Market on 118th Street on Liberty Avenue, or in Maryland at 7505 New Hampshire Ave, or any West Indian stores, or allfromonesupplier.com. Dave West Indian, your 100% authentic West Indian product.
So welcome back as we continue this evening's program on alcoholism and violence, discussing that issue with our three distinguished panelists, counsel, former magistrate, political activist, and Mr. Albert Baldeo, another political activist, a champion of the Indo-Caribbean, Caribbean, and West Indian community here in New York City, Mr. Vishnu Sahadeo, and from Toronto, Mr. Ramnarine Sahadeo, a practicing lawyer and an author on Ghanaian studies. Before we resume, I do want to convey a belated sympathy to our dear friend Vishnu Sahadeo, who lost his mother almost 2 weeks ago. Today, I believe, was the 12th day prayers. So Vishnu, again, our deepest heartfelt condolence on the passing of your mother, Mataji, and may her soul rest in peace. So we are discussing alcoholism and violence, and Albert Baldeo was suggesting that one needs to make perhaps videos or some kind of pictures available to people who consume alcohol as well as who smoke cigarettes. And he was suggesting an imposition of a higher sin tax. It's called sin tax for taxes on those kind of bad habits of drinking, or imbibing alcohol and smoking cigarettes. I myself I'm in favor of higher taxation in order to discourage, but very often it doesn't really discourage consumption or smoking. And so government ends up collecting more revenues. Now, if those revenues can be used to educate the people of the consequences of smoking and alcoholism, it would go a long way. And both of them have pretty much about the same effect on the body. Cigarettes do really damage your lungs, and as Albert said when he was a magistrate, one of the problems brought to his attention was a vice president's father, a former vice president's father in Guyana, who died after, I guess, decades of smoking. His lungs had pretty much disappeared, and smoking is a serious risk problem, leads to lung cancer, among other problems. So yes, one of the solutions is to increase taxes on alcohol as well as cigarettes, and as we all know, too much consumption of alcohol leads to, as Vishnu Mahadeo said, cirrhosis of the liver. So Vishnu, what do you think? What are some ways that you could address this problem?
Well, thank you for your kind and caring comments. Now, with regards to the issue of sin tax, that is actually one way to go. In addition to that, we also need to be able to have the legal system where if you get a DWI, they should take your license away, not for a couple of months, but for a couple of years. In so doing, you will know it is not permissible for you to drive whilst under the influence of alcohol. The penalty needs to be go up, because once that deterrent factor is in place, people become a little more skeptic or a little more cautious about going to that limit. So we need to also look at our laws that can make a difference and be able to put additional penalty when it comes to alcoholism, because it is not something that is socially cool. It is something that destroys your family and your health, and people need to look at it from that sort of standpoint.
I'm glad you brought up this issue of DUI and DWI. You know, in recent weeks and months, several youngsters in our community died from traffic accidents, from alcohol consumption, as well as from smoking weed, marijuana, using drugs. And they all have the same effect pretty much on the body. You lose your sense of who you are, what you are, as Albert Baldeo had pointed out before. You're a totally different person when you're inebriated, and you cannot think properly of what you're doing. You do strange things. You could even end up committing crimes and so forth, and you don't even know. So yes, one needs to be educated and informed about the consequences of drinking, as well as drug abuse, drug overdose, and so forth. But let's bring the attention back to Guyana, where we started out. Alcoholism is a very, very serious problem all over the country, not only among Indians, but Amerindian community and others as well. So how widespread is this problem? If we may ask Ram Sahadeo. Ram, you
can look at the newspapers. I haven't gone to Guyana for a long time, but just look at the newspapers. Almost every day somebody kills somebody because they were drinking together, and it's a relative, it's a friend, it's a neighbor, somebody. You sit down together.
You're right. The newspaper repeatedly, almost every day, you're right. There is some kind of tragic incident having to do with alcohol. If it's not an accident, it is a murder.
That's right, and mostly family affairs. It is so serious. Look, I like to correct you, though. I am not practicing law. I retired 4 years ago, but the last case I did was on refugees, which was based on domestic assault, nothing else, because there's a lot of that coming out from the Caribbean, where the governments are unable to protect these victims. And the case can be made out very strongly. I had many successful cases like that from other islands too. But I'm not practicing. I decided I wasn't going to be representing people. And in my practice, I represented somebody once if they have a problem with alcohol-related issues, whether it's domestic assault, impaired driving, or anything like that. Because if they come back a second time, I made sure that they know that they have more than a legal problem. And they have to go and try to resolve that. I would like to ask anybody, if you are invited to a wedding and you don't want to go because you know everybody going to come home drunk or with a bottle of whiskey, are you brave enough to send a letter back to the people who invited you saying, I wish you well, my gift is in the mail, but I cannot come because you have decided that alcohol is more important than my presence? With a group of guys have been distributing Bhagavad Gitas for years. You know that, Vishnu, it's called a Gita for each home. And most people, when they have an event, whether it's a wedding or a funeral or so, we encourage people to take a copy, pocket size, and distribute it. And many people would say that it is not appropriate for this or that occasion because they prefer the alcohol to the Bhagavad Gita, and both can be present at the same place.
But you know, Ram, weddings, you know, and regardless of the faith, has some of them have three days of wedding, you know, where they have the actual wedding, they have a reception, and quote unquote the post reception, the kangan or whatever else you want to call it, and the first day they may not serve alcohol, but the second day and third day there is a binge. And so therefore, without that second day reception and even the third day reception, people don't want to come to the wedding. So how do you address that problem? I mean, Albert Baldeo pointed it out before. You know, a small amount of alcohol is okay, but how do you get responsible drinking? I
have attended non-alcoholic weddings, and 500 people showed up.
Okay. Well, listen,
I have known many individuals who, you know, that whenever they have an event, there will be no alcohol. And these are many different religions, different cultures. Not because it is there that we cannot change it. You speak about 3 days wedding. I am aware about 2 weeks wedding, and there's no alcohol.
Okay.
You know, Vishnu, this can also present other issues. For example, it's a wedding and people really go there to celebrate, like you mentioned. It would be extremely difficult to restrict them totally all. I think a better solution, or a workable one worthwhile to think about, is to have like a designated driver. 5 of us go in a car, and then the one of the wives drive, or something like that, to make sure that at least 4 or 5 of those 6 people can really do justice. You see, we're coming out of a COVID pandemic. We're coming out of an economic stagnation. We're coming out of pain and suffering where people have been dying. It is difficult to envisage a world where people continue to live with such, pain and suffering, honestly, because it's very difficult. I see it on people's faces. They need a lift. They need some recreation. That can be solved by drinking some of the alcohol at the wedding, not too much, of course, but at least to celebrate the occasion with the right champagne and so on, and making sure that the people who are driving do not drink. Warn them about that. And also, we should try to, we should try to, because then you'll have more suicides. If people get so depressed, that will trigger off more suicides and hopelessness. And people don't really get to celebrate. You got to imagine, too, that there's a lot of funerals, a lot of the weddings, 2 and 3 people were allowed. So now that they get a chance, and things are easing up, people will be glad to come together, like at a cricket ground and so on, too. There's so many other festive occasions. I take your point. I'm not saying that it is something that we should just treat lightly, but we've got to be able to make compromises amongst people, so that they can continue to live a bountiful life, or a life of joy, than just become stagnated and, you know, depressed, and we already have so much on our shoulders. I'm not saying going to drink till you fall down and you roll down in the corner. And then again, there's a disease, you know. I've interviewed a lot of these people on Liberty Avenue. These people are not beggars. They are not people without a home. They are respectable people. And guess what the problem is? I've seen their family come and give them food. Some of the best meals, and they don't eat the food, they drink the liquor. And I find out more. These people come from respectable families, but they have a disease. They can't help it. They would stay on Liberty Avenue there and so on, and right there in the cold, you know. We're wrong, they're there. And these are respectable people. Some are very successful, but the system has suppressed them. The historical institution of imperialism, colonialism, and all these vestiges of oppression have also had its toll on us. And, you know, I sympathize with that, but by no means am I saying that we should just, outlaw alcoholism, all forms of it. We should regulate it. And you made a good point about the taxation, the sin tax, but we should also have that any money drawn from that doesn't go to somebody else's pocket. It goes to the people who need, the families who have suffered from alcoholism abuse, so that therefore people are, you know, replenished, they're made whole, and the money comes back to victims, and especially victims like who died in crashes and DWI driving, and so compensate them from that fund. Just like what they do with the drug fund when properties are seized and sold, they give the money to the people who've been affected most. This country does not do that, America. They take the money and give it to other people. It doesn't go to the victims of immigration or things like that. And there should be a fairer trace of this money back to where it came from, the victims of drunken driving and things like that.
So you mentioned 2 points, which I want to follow up on, and that is alcoholism is a disease, and secondly, suicide is tied to alcoholism. So before we address those, let's see if Vishnu Mahadeo has some points to make. Vishnu?
Well, yes, actually, what I would like to add is that the programs in terms of advocacy, we need to be able to let our elected officials also be aware of the need for these changes and the effect it has on our community. Because one good thing here about the United States, the elected officials listen to their voters, and we have to make sure our voices are heard so that our needs are being addressed effectively. So we can actually use the system that we are living in to benefit from it, to help us to develop more effective laws. But we as a community need to get more involved and start voting more and start to be a little more civic minded.
And becoming more politically involved also enables you to get more assistance from government for social programs to address these kinds of social ills like alcoholism, teenage pregnancy, suicide, and so forth. So yes, getting more politically involved is absolutely a necessity. Political involvement among the Indo-Caribbean community has been very, very low, perhaps the lowest among many immigrant groups. So we need to address that problem as well. So let's now try to see how do we connect, or not connect, but we know that alcoholism leads to hopelessness and despair for whatever reason, and so it needs to be addressed. And secondly, alcoholism does lead to serious suicide problem, not only among the people who imbibe, consume alcohol, but family members as well. When family members are being abused by drunks, alcoholics, it often leads to very, very disastrous consequences where members of the family may leave home, and some of them may even engage or consider suicide as an option. Ram, Sahadeo, do you?
Yes. I hope nobody is saying that you can't sing and dance and have fun unless you drink alcohol, because there are examples all over the world that people can do these things. In fact, Albert referred to Jeddy Jagan. I believe, I stand to be corrected, that our current president and the vice president does not imbibe. Go and tell them that they're not having fun when they go to a wedding.
Mhm.
Can we have?
I mean, look, many of
Can
us
we
don't
have
drink at
peace?
weddings. Yes, I do agree. Yes.
There are people right in the community. We have examples. That is why I'm saying it wouldn't be a long list, but let us recognize those families who have not consumed alcohol.
Yeah, I
And there
agree
wouldn't be
with
a
you,
long
Ram,
list. It wouldn't be a long list.
except as Albert pointed out, there are people, no matter what you say to them, they're still going to imbibe. So you have to address that concern as well. Yes, do discourage people from drinking. Have programs in place, educational programs, telling them about the consequences of alcohol. But you must also address those who, no matter what you tell them, them hard of hearing. So you have to
Yeah,
have some.
there is no doubt that some people have reached the stage where they need help.
Yes.
And there is no doubt about that. The issue
Yeah, Mr.
is let
Sahadeo
us
is right.
not
There's some
start them.
people who are wicked, so to speak, in Guyanese parlance. Then drink the alcohol for wickedness, and some can't help themselves. It is a latter category that I'm addressing, that they need professional psychological help. But Vishnu made a very good point, which I want to stress. You know, that is why when you guys, and used to Vishnu, when you talked about getting involved in politics, because in our district here in New York, we don't have funds coming to us because our voices don't rise and our issues don't rise to the top. However, with a new district we have fought for, which I hope, you know, inshallah and God willing and Lord Krishna willing, we get, then our issues like these, domestic violence, alcoholism, things like unemployment and you know, things like these will become issues top of the line where a Guyanese American would be able to address them. Gil Baca not coming in here, the oil 2%, we can shed light on that, we can have a voice. This is how the system can accommodate us. As long as you guys said you vote and you get involved, this is the key to this thing. Because as long as we have a district or districts, state senate, state assembly, which I'm running for, then we would be able to get a seat at the table of government. We can then channel resources because we don't have to ask anybody now. We have a seat at the table of government. We're self-governing. And this is what independence means. This is what we really got to keep going and keep pushing. And you guys are right. This is where the solution lies, where these issues can become front and foremost, so we can have like counseling centers set up specially for people with alcoholic problems and other diseases and unemployment insurances, and kids can't get into school and immigration and, you know, throw them out and this and that. All these issues can be solved. That is why we have to have a seat at the table of government and power. And time is coming very soon. Inshallah, God willing, Lord Krishna willing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I mean, Vishnu Mahadeo has been a champion of political representation. He has been very successful in getting a COVID test done, as well as COVID vaccine. I've seen Albert Baldeo in some pictures a few days last week in front, encouraging, and was able to get testing done. I don't know if vaccine is also, yes. So Vishnu Mahadeo is absolutely on the ball in saying, look, we need political engagement, we need political involvement. You have to register to vote and come out and vote. And actually voting is, I think, is on Tuesday coming.
Tuesday, correct. And they have early voting going on right now.
Yeah, for New York City council races and New York City district-wide races, as well as the mayoral race. And there is early voting. People can go out and vote now. You don't have to wait until Tuesday. So please go out and vote. I think you could vote until Sunday in early voting in several locations. And make your voices be heard. And once your voice is heard and politicians see that you're voting, then they themselves will come and approach you to see what they can do for you. You don't even have to approach them anymore or what you need.
Right.
But at the time being, we do need a political empowerment, and we do need to demand services in all the areas that we have been discussing tonight. But I do want to return back to the discussion on Guyana about since the focus is there about alcoholism as well as solution to alcoholism in Guyana. Vishnu Sahadeo has brought up the issue that we need to raise this matter with the Ministry of Social Security, Social Affairs, and as well as with other ministries. It doesn't have to be one ministry itself exclusively. Vishnu, you're there? You want to comment some more on that? On so the ministry.
He's on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Mr. Sahadeo, can you unmute, please?
Sorry. Now.
Yeah, we're hearing you now. Go ahead.
Yes, we actually have a unique opportunity ahead of us because we have a young lady from our community, Miss Felicia Singh, who is running for the city council in District 32. And we need to empower our people and motivate them to come out and vote for her. We have Miss Ogle running for a judge. We have people within our community that can help us to advocate the changes we are talking about. And it's right at our doorstep, because between now and Tuesday, we can have our voice both at city council and in the courts in the New York state system. So we need to get our people to understand any social problem you have, go and start voting and get involved. You can make change. Listen, I'm not trying to promote myself, but I was single-handedly responsible to get that testing van and vaccine van here in Richmond Hill, because I went straight to the governor and the mayor of New York, and I told them I control more than 1,000 votes in my community. And guess what? They responded. And I am very proud that we have people like that in our community. Now we have the opportunity to rewrite history. This is the first time in our history we have somebody who is a Democrat running for the city council in District 32. And Felicia Singh is our people, and we need to push very hard for her to become an elected official.
Yes, no, Vishnu, we are proud of your work that you have done in getting COVID testing and COVID vaccination in that Richmond Hill area, where that testing van is permanently placed at 125th Street and 95th Avenue, and
my home.
Right across from your home, yes. And it, we utilize that service a lot. The community utilizes it quite a bit. Yes, so if one is very active, politicians do respond. And that is why I have been suggesting, and you and Albert and others, that we need to become more politically involved in our community and in political affairs, not only in our district, but citywide, statewide as well.
And Vishnu, there's an important follow-up to this, because like Vishnu said, we have some judges who are going to be elected, like Judge Gopi. Judge Karen Gopi, I'm from Tunapuna. I used to live there when I went to law school. And so often she lives there too. Tunapuna in Trinidad. Yes. Now she's going to be the first Trinidadian to be elected as Supreme Court judge. She's already a judge. And you have Ogle, like he said, and then you also have some other judges that I don't recall right now. But the thing is this: when you have judges like that, and you have a DWI come before them, instead of them just sending a young Guyanese or Trinidadian straight to prison for X amount of years, like in Brooklyn, they have developed a system where young blacks and other races who have ethnicities do have programs that they divert them to help them. So when they come out of prison, they don't come out a more hardened criminal. They have resources, and they give them treatment, and they give them counseling. So with judges like that, they will understand that the solution is not necessarily a punitive one to lost these young people away for decades, but it's divert them to programs that can help them socially, medically, counsel-wise, and otherwise. So if you have judges of the same background in our community that understand our children, understand their nephews and nieces and our neighbors, they would be able to implement policies that can help instead of incarcerating and permanently staining our kids and our children, they would be able to help them to reform themselves and to be able to become better productive members of society. So this whole political thing is what you put in, you give out, you get back. And hence we are planting the seeds here. And you know, I've planted many, I've probably planted forests, as people know, in this community, and I'll continue to do so. But this has really been the help and the increasing power that we have. So come now, so they have to recognize us as a body. They had to give us little Guyana, because we were on them for decades, 3 decades we've been pushing them. Redistrict us, give us our due. And the time has come, God willing and God blessings, that we are now on the threshold of having our own little region 11 here, so to speak, our own little Guyana, American, which will be linked to Guyana. So you'll have more trade, like Gilbaca coming in, or the oil problems, and a group to advocate and to consolidate democracy in Guyana. So that this having a voice in America, as you know, this is the headquarters of the world and in the United Nations, we'll be able to do a lot more for Guyanese brothers and sisters in Guyana, such as probably even solving that problem with alcoholism and also solving problems from this end, because we do have the same social problems that migrate to America, fueled by alcoholic abuse. So, you know, the whole world is global. The whole world is connected, Dr. Bisram, as you know, and hence we have to continue to fight the good fight. And that will lead us to the promised land.
So Ram, Sahadeo, Albert is suggesting rehabilitative efforts should be pursued here as a means of reforming people's who are alcoholics and so forth in New York City. In Guyana, I mean, I don't know, are there such programs of rehabilitation? And maybe Albert himself would also know. Of those who abuse alcohol or even drug abusers, whether they're, rather than sending straight to jail. I know I've been reading the newspaper quite a bit where, you know, the prison sentence is very stiff for people who engage in these small, petty kind of crimes, where rehabilitative efforts would have been much better. Sending somebody incarcerated for a year, 2 years, 3 or 5, that doesn't reform the person unless you're providing some kind of rehabilitative educational values to them, so that they would see their behavior as wrong, bad for themselves and their families. Ram, do you know of any programs in Guyana?
I don't. There's total agreement though. Whether it's drug or alcohol, when somebody becomes an addict, it's not punishment but treatment that's appropriate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My push, of course, is to make sure they don't get to that stage, and stop, you know, by leading good examples, role models, and we have them in the community. It would have been nice to have. It would have been nice to have, and I hope we continue this program. I thank Noah and others who put it together, but I hope we have future programs like this where we can get the contribution from government and other agencies in Guyana as to the answer to your question. I would be guessing, and I don't want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say this, Dr. Bisram, I think the Attorney General, look, there was never legal aid in Guyana. You have legal aid there for poor people, right? There's many things, courts all over the place, that he's the kind of person who would implement such a program. If he comes and he observes it here, how it works in New York, we take it to Brooklyn, see, well, this is how the courts work. They have a diversion program here. It's funded by the state. And these people don't go to jail. They go, like you said, 2 and 3 years of their best lives and become worse criminals and more hardened. They then be able to rehabilitate themselves and learn a trade and become more productive and things like that. I think he's the kind of person who would readily implement such positive and uplifting measures for young people and other people too, you know, instead of just incarcerating them.
There is even, you know, now restorative justice. I mean,
of course, the world is leading towards that.
Yeah. So Vishnu, you had suggested that we need to address the ministries and the Ministry of Social Security in particular, and the Health Ministry, to come up with some kind of social programs to address this problem. I mean, alcoholism is a problem. We cannot just pretend it doesn't exist. We must implement some kind of program to rehabilitate people in Guyana who have this problem. of not only being alcoholics, but drug abusers as well. Vishnu, we are not hearing you.
He's still on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, start over.
The social service minister is overwhelmed. And we, as the people in the diaspora, needs to be able to give her that lending hand so that she can more effectively deal with that issue. Because honestly speaking, I had counsel with her, and she's very receptive, but she is overwhelmed because she's taken on a system that was so broken that anything would have been a solution, and she is actually now trying her best to make things happen. She's a very competent young lady, but we have to be able to help her and give her some more information and to lend her the tools that is needed to put these programs in place.
Mm-hmm. So we have in Guyana so many casualties of alcoholism. We talked about the pandit who was murdered by 5. I don't know how to describe them, what to call them, rogues or whatever.
And then the alcohol got to them in such a way that they were able to slaughter an elderly person because he stood up and told them they're making too much of an unruly noise and they should stop the alcohol drinking and the loud conversation. And you're going to go and kill a person because of that? That's unacceptable by any standard.
And so therefore, but the point I'm making is that you have 5 lives in addition to the family that has been destroyed through the tragedy. You have 5 more families are being destroyed as well. These are men who probably were employed, they were contributing to their family's life, bringing home earnings. And so it is just an illustration of how alcoholism has destroyed so many lives in Guyana, and it's crying for a solution. And so therefore it becomes all the more important for us here in the diaspora to become more involved in it and to provide whatever guidance and support for the authorities in Guyana, for the Ministry of Public Security, as well as the Minister of Health in Guyana. Yes, we should offer our a helping hand to Minister Dr. Vindya Prasad to address this kind of problem, and not only in Guyana but wherever else in the home countries, in Suriname or in Trinidad or in Jamaica, wherever else. Albert Baldeo.
Yes, I agree with you. I have seen the government implement good policies in Guyana. I think they're on the right course. They are open to suggestions. They were here also, from the president, Irfan Ali, to the vice president, Mr. Sahadeo, to the prime minister, Mr. Phillips, and Gail Teixeira and all these other stalwarts. They are very willing to listen and learn. And as we talked about the whole world being global, they have implemented policies as they see fit. And definitely there are some of the issues that we have discussed here tonight, and Mr. Nandalal also has come. And he's implemented a lot of groundbreaking legal reforms, brilliant man that he is, in Guyana. So I know that they have an open mind, and they know that America leads the world in many things, and also is not always the greatest solution. But they have to pick and choose what is relevant to Guyana, what can be had, what we can learn from, what help they can get from America. And other countries like Canada, where Ramnarine is, and all these UK and all these great countries that are willing to help Guyana and put back what imperialism took from us, colonialized this. Because in the Lodges, the only thing the people had there was the little bush rum, the little bushy, so to speak, on the weekends, Dr. Bisram. There was no other form of recreation. So, now that the world has changed and we become more modern, I think the time has come now where we have to gradually ease out that mentality or overcome it. And our people have been doing that. Our children and the generations that come have recognized that they want a better life, that they're not going to get into smoking, they're not going to get into drinking, they're not going to get into this alcoholic abuse or become victims. They're going to be stalwarts, they're going to be professors, they're going to be very brilliant people, and they have shown that. So it's a cycle that we are in. And hopefully we're going to continue towards that dream, and we're going to continue to achieve and overcome these cycles, and in the meantime implement very strong measures to diminish the alcohol consumption and abuse in Guyana.
That's an absolutely impressive, brilliant summary, if I may consider it as that. And since we only have 2 minutes left, let me give an opportunity to Ram Sahadeo out of Toronto for your final thoughts.
Yes, I think I like to support whatever Albert said, but it is best to get the ministers themselves on the program so that we know exactly what they're doing. They may have some programs that we do not know about, and this is why I don't want to speculate. But the other point I'd like to make that wasn't covered before was that, you see, when cigarette was a problem, the manufacturers had to put a notice on the box. Can we do that with the alcoholic manufacturers? And this thing is harmful to health.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
And only, and take it like medicine, as Albert says, you want more than one, and you're gonna get incarcerated.
Yes.
So I'm happy to be on the program, and I hope that we follow up, because this problem is not gonna go away by discussion. It has to be dealt with, by a series of approaches. But I like the individual approach because that's very quick and it tests your courage. And I hope, Pandit, that we get more priests and imams and pandits to tell people they will not be conducting their ceremonies if there is alcohol present.
Good point, yeah. Vishnu Mahadeo, any final thoughts?
Yes, sir. I will actually take this opportunity to implore upon the listeners for them to get motivated to go out and vote. Voting, as we all explained in previous conversations, is critical for us to solve our social issues. We have the opportunity between today and next week, Tuesday, to elect judges, city council people that are going to be able to listen, be more receptive to us. So in parting, I would like to say very quickly that our people need to understand the importance of their vote and must use it effectively. Let us come out in large numbers and make a difference. Show people we care. And once we vote, they will recognize us and they will be a little more receptive to our social issues. In addition to that, I must commend Mr. Sahadeo in that it is important that we engage these social service ministers and ministers of health on these forums, and then allow opportunity to ask meaningful questions or to be able to engage them in terms of meaningful dialogue. With that, I must say thanks to Globespan and Mr. Nohar Singh for being insightful in putting together a social program of this magnitude.
Any other parting words, Albert, before we?
Yes, I'm going to read Dr. Ramnarine Sahadeo's book on Mahatma Gandhi. I have one here, but I know his is the locus classicus, so to speak. What he wrote on Gandhi, I want to compliment him on that. But Vishnu, these are great programs because you know why? We are interconnected to Guyana every day. Who Nohar has done a wonderful job in bringing this endeavor in, and yourself and other moderators like Charles Sugram and Dr. Rose and so on. And I believe that the flow of ideas that flow from America to Guyana and vice versa, and problems with the think tank and the diaspora and the kind of support we have given Guyana and the kind of support they have given us, I believe that we can nail this thing, and we can have sit down with the ministers. Nobody's bigger than anybody. Sit down and discuss these things with all the leaders in the community and the religious leaders, and with Mr. Sahadeo and Don Paul and Ryan and all these guys, yourself and so on, Dr. Singh, all these wonderful thinkers. And let's come to Dr. Girdhari. Let's come up with solutions. These guys are brilliant men. They've been around a long time, and we can find solutions here. We can help, and I think that is the way to go, to have like an international body of counselors and of consultants and leaders from both sides. The amount of brain power that we have and think tank is absolutely impressive, and we can look into all these problems and help each other out.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your usage of Latin, classicus, locus classicus. I haven't heard it for a very long time. I do want to thank you, gentlemen, Mr. Ramnarine Sahadeo of Toronto, Albert Baldeo of New York, Vishnu Mahadeo also of New York. I am Vishnu Bisram of New York and Guyana as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking your time out of this evening to share your thoughts, ideas on alcoholism and violence in Guyana. I also want to thank Mr. Nohar Singh and Mr. Devin Bissoon for their time and for giving us this opportunity to discuss this very, very important topic. Thank you. Good night. Goodbye.
Goodbye.